I think that what we're seeing right now is with respect to marriage in a conventional sense is we're seeing a fundamental reimagining of the relationship between men and women as a result of bringing women into, like, say, the workforce, or putting them into a position of social power that we have after the sexual revolution. So right now we're looking at things like, poly relationships, or we're looking at, quote unquote, equal partnerships, or an egalitarian kind of ideal in relationships, which simply doesn't work and we can see that it doesn't work because now here we are in the 21st century and we have access to the data that shows us that when a woman gets an increase in pay, or she gets a, promotion at work, that precipitates divorce. Why? Well, because innately speaking, that woman wants a guy who is more valuable, who is taller, stronger, more protective, all, the 3 Ps: provisioning, protection, and parental investment. And if that guy cannot provide, if that guy cannot make as much money, and that's the only metric that women really have right now. If that guy's not making that much money, he's economically unattractive. She doesn't want to marry that guy, and she doesn't want to pair with that guy because on an evolutionary level, that makes her feel insecure. Right. He's dead weight. He's somebody that he's another child that she has to be responsible for in the family to some degree, whether he's making a lot of money or he's not. He's making less than she is. And so therefore she's responsible for for his security. Whereas, from an evolutionary perspective, it should be the other way around, where the guy is. So convincing women to, like, when Rich was saying, we have to, or Rich and Aaron and everybody else is saying, we got to find some way to sort of convince women that shouldn't be the case. It's like saying men should be attracted to fat chicks, right? Saying that, like, it's like saying something that's fundamentally goes against our innate natures. That's never going to happen with women. But what we've done is we've given women the option to say, okay, you can be in control of your own security. You can have all the benefits of sort of this new order way of thinking, but you're still based in your old order, innate biological needs for these guys to be who they are and what they ought to be. So what you see, I think one of the things that's sort of like a rude awakening, I think, for most guys right now is when they saw those the data sets for women finding men economically unattractive, they also asked, well, what would make a man economically attractive? And they found that the man had to make at least as much as they did, plus 58% more. That made a guy economically attractive. That put him up into at least the quote unquote, high value man.
Top 14% when I did the numbers. 14% of men.
Yes. And so, it's, like you said, the eye of the needle kind of thing. And I think the rude awakening is that most men approach love from an idealistic perspective. We think that love should matter just for the sake of love, right? Because we tend to be idealists. We tend to look out at the world instead of in at ourselves, which is really where women start to look, right? They're more interested in people, and men tend to be more interested in things. Right. So as a result of that, when we talk about like how women don't want to get with a guy who's economically unattractive, what that does is it exposes the game. Women love opportunistically, and men love idealistically. How do we know that? Well, we can see that women don't want to marry guys who don't make don't make the kind of money that they do. You give women enough money and you give them enough financial, like I'm looking at the stats right here. This is from Uber Facts. It says worldwide females earn $18 trillion, but they spend $28 trillion. That to me sounds a lot like opportunism right there. The other stat was American women hold 2/3 of student debt. So when you look at things like this, it's like, yeah, women want to find either a guy that's going to help them pay that debt, or they're going to vote for the guy who's going to say, yeah, we're going to absolve all of your student debt and put you in the presidency because that was part of your presidential platform, was to get us out of debt. So to me, that sounds a lot like opportunism right there. So when we're looking at those things, it sort of is a rude awakening for guys who want to believe that their sort of, their love ideal is based on, I love you just as much as you love me. It's like, well, women and men are approaching that in marriage, approaching love, approaching solving their reproductive problems and everything else from different perspectives. And we can see that in black and white now that we have access to the internet, we have access to all of this stuff. And then finally is that I think that in the future, we're starting to see this, polyamory. We're starting to see, really polygamy is what it is. And this is an old school Royce quote, which is, women would rather share a high value alpha than be saddled with a faithful beta loser. And so what's happening right now is the really super high value guys are going to be the ones who are going to be the cads who are going to end up outbreeding the dads, because those dads are not they might be raising the children of the guys that women want to get with and want to have sex with and want to reproduce with. But those other guys, as long as they are beta males who are economically unattractive and in other ways unattractive, as Rich was saying before, is like they're not on their game. They're not trying to become the best, man that they can possibly be, if they don't even just check out of the game, entirely. What happens then is we have a society that has to adjust for that. So right now, when we talk about when we make single dads or stepdads superheroes, we're basically saying, give up your any claim you have to your own paternity, and that's okay. And women will say, a real man is a guy who steps up and takes over, even if the kid's not his. When we start popularizing narratives like that, it's as a result of trying to change over to a new form of relationship, and that's what I think is going to end up replacing modern conventional marriage right now.
So that means a lower population.
And what they're trying to do is they're trying to invent these new categories of marriages and society lies to women as much as it does to men, right? I mean, one of the more common ones is you start to see a lot of these shows and video clips of these career-driven women with the stay-at-home father. And then they portray, the family unit as
a modern family marriage.
It's a modern family. It's very successful. Everybody's happy, except for when you look at the guy, he's a browbeaten plow horse. You know that they're not banging. Maybe they have transactional sex once every 3 months or something like that. And you can see it in her face. She's not happily married to this guy. She does not look up to him. There's no way that she ever looks up to a guy like that. The clock is ticking down to the end of that relationship at some point. Yeah. But again, women will consume these narratives hook, line, and sinker. Yeah, I can go, climb the corporate ladder, go feminism, women are equal to men, blah, blah, blah. And they go and fabricate these new families which don't last. They don't serve the children properly. They sure as hell don't serve the man and woman properly.
Yeah. I responded to a guy, I forget what conversation this was from, but somebody had said something about how, or maybe I was doing a breakdown video, and somebody had said something about how men should have the opportunity to be stay-at-home dads if they want to. Mm-hmm. Right? And that should be some sort of ennobling.
I blame Mr. Mom. Wasn't that a movie in the 80s with Michael Keaton?
Yeah, as if that should be some sort of.
That's when it started, yeah.
And that there's this large demographic of guys who are just pining over the fact that they can't be stay-at-home moms like a mom, right? Like the Mr. Mom narrative. And I'm just like, there are literally no guys that want to do that. And if there are, it is such a minuscule percentage of guys that really want to do something like that. And it's not because they're assholes, and it's not because they're not, evolved males or anything like that. It's because that goes against their innate biological imperatives is what it is. Most, and what's interesting to me is even in light of human males' investment in their own offspring, it's very rare in the animal kingdom for men for male mammals at least to be invested in the upbringing of their own offspring. It's usually left to the females to do something like that, and men are actually more invested, even as much as they can be right now. But when we see how marriage is an all downside contract for guys, that's by design. We're there right now because we're trying to figure out how we're going to allow women to maintain this old order ideal where they want to have the best of the best. They still have to have, they're still, their mating strategy is still hypergamy. They're still interested in quality, but yet the new order benefits, which is you can go get your degree and become a doctor and go get your, you're going to be lonely. Those are going to be the results of that are going to be in the future in 2030, the likelihood of you being a prime working age woman who is single, no children, and unmarried are much more likely as a result of that. So we're trying to tell women that they don't have these consequences aren't going to be affecting them when in fact they are. And then when they get to that point, then that's a bridge that they'll cross when they get to that point. But in the meantime, we have to find some way to convince them, as Rich was saying here before, whether it's through popular media or through pop culture, through television shows or stories or whatever the popular narrative is that this is the new way that we're doing things. And we're still, that new way is conflicting with the old order, innate biological evolutionary imperatives of human beings. That's just how the machine works. That's just how we evolved. So there's that.